Yeah, actually, it's up to you. If you want to wait a few more minutes, I'm okay with that. But if you want, we can start. At least I can introduce myself briefly.
Okay.
We can start with that. My name is Çağlar Güvel. I am Pharmacovigilance and Medical Information Head in Bayer Türk Drug and Consumer Health Division. I am leading the team of 4, and then all of them is consist from the pharmacies, because my area of expertise is a little bit specific for the pharmacies, and basically we can say HCPs, including physicians like you. You have a candidate for being a physician, and thank you very much, first of all, giving that opportunity. It is my pleasure to be with you and actually present you today a little bit information about the current pharmaceutical industry dynamics, and also we will a little bit talk about the future of the pharmaceutical industry. That will be the focus for today. Please interrupt me in case of any question. Don't wait until the end of the presentation. Actually, I want to be a little bit interactive with you, and I'm happy to answer your questions during the presentation. I believe we can start with the presentation. What do you think, Dalia, İlayda? Shall we wait for the others, or?
It's up to Dalia.
We can start actually, but İlayda has something to say, I guess, for starting.
Yeah, okay, sure.
I was just going to introduce you. So hello and welcome to our event again. We are so excited to have you as well here today and learn the new trends in the pharmacology and the pharmacology industry with your experiences in the field more than maybe 10 years or so. I would like to introduce you to our members just a little bit, and then I will give you the words to you. Okay. So our guest has graduated from the Marmara University Faculty of Pharmacy and then proceeds a master's degree in pharmacology. And as he said, he's currently working at Bayer for the chief, and he has been in the industry as I know, quality control and also management. So we are thrilled to learn more about your knowledge. Thank you once again.
Okay, thank you very much again. Then we can start with the first slide. Actually, as I said, today focus will be the pharmaceutical industry, and first of all, I will actually look at the key elements of that industry and actually who are our key stakeholders, who actually in which partners we are working closely. When we look at our key stakeholders, the first one is the regulators. Maybe you heard about that during the news, and especially the drugs belongs to the government decision, basically in every aspect, from pricing to reimbursement. That's why regulators, actually we mean the social security institution and also our medicine and medical device agency. These are the main key regulators in Turkey, regulating the pharmaceutical industry. Actually, for pricing and product registration, actually we are working with the medical and medical device agency. And for the reimbursement issues, actually we are closely working with the social security institution. That's why regulators is one of the main element of this. Actually one of the key pillar of this environment. And the other one is healthcare providers like you in the future, and actually physicians, pharmacists, nurses, based on the product. Actually these are our key stakeholders, and because they are the actually bridge between the companies and also patients, and actually they are our actually right end in the field, and then they explain the drug to the patients, and then from the physician's perspective, they decide which product will be used in which patient. That's why we are closely working with the HCPs to learn more about our products, and also we also share our expertise about the disease and the product. And the last one is patients and public. And definitely these are the most important part for the pharmaceutical industry, because actually we are basically working with the patients to understand their needs, and also we are working research and development activities to find the products for the unmet needs for the patients. And that's why this is so important, and then this is our actually source of presence, because patients and disease are the main working area for the pharmaceutical industry, as you can imagine. And also industries itself, we will talk about it a little bit more in next slides. So I will move to the next one. Yes, actually, I would like to ask a question before actually talking about that slide. Actually, what is your perception about the pharmaceutical industry when you actually consider the actually total health expenditure? Actually, do you know that the drugs actually account for just about 19% of the total health expenditure? Actually, this is a surprise for you, or do you already know about it?
I believe it's quite a bit of surprise for me, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a definitely a surprise for the most of the people in the public, because actually when we look at the news and also social media, and you can see that actually everyone thought that actually the drugs are too expensive and actually not affordable, especially if you are talking about the innovative medicines in the cardiology, oncology, and the immunology area. The prices is high, yes, we can accept that, but actually when we look at the total health expenditure, the drugs only account for 19% of the total, and that means that we are just covering the 20% of the total health expenditure, and most of the actually expenditure or cost goes to the inpatient care. We are talking about the hospitals here, and the number is a little bit increased. This is the actually average of the OECD countries, and in Turkey we can say that this number is a little bit high comparing to the other countries. And in patient care, we are talking about the hospital cost, and it's about account for 50% of the total health expenditure. Do you have any question about it? By the way, for the medical goods, we are not just talking about the pharmaceuticals. Actually, we are also talking about the food supplements and also cosmetics and medical devices. These are considered as a medical goods as well. Especially medical devices account for a very huge amount of that cost, and then that's why we could not say that actually drugs only actually it's possible to say drugs only cover the 10% of the total health expenditure. Yes, when we look at the market, pharmaceutical industry market, and as you can see here, the US is actually US and North America, including the US and Canada, actually account for about 50% of the half of the industry, due to the actually they are very supportive for the innovative medicines. As you know, FDA is the regulatory authority in the US. And for Canada, Health Canada is the key regulatory for the drug approvals. And when we look at the market here, it is very high because the FDA and Health Canada is very actually interested with the new medicines, and also registered the new medicines firstly in all around the world, and that's why they pay too much money for the innovative medicine. That's why this is very key markets for all drug companies around the world. And in the second line, you can see the Europe. Europe actually accounts for 25% of the total market, actually quarter of the total market. And also China is an emerging country, as you know, from all aspects. And this is also applicable for the drug companies. And actually it raised its presence in the pharma industry and reached to the 10%. And actually, and the expectation is that China will actually more grow in the next few years and next few decades, and that's why the companies actually still actually invest in the Chinese market. And the other markets, when you look at the numbers, actually the Japan market is also still favorable for the pharmaceutical industry, and actually consists of only one country, but actually it's actually generally considered as a region for the pharmaceutical companies, because as a alone country, they actually account for 6% of the total market. And when we look at the other countries, especially in the Middle East, Africa, and Asian countries, they are just actually covering the 8% of the total market, including Turkey. Yes, the next one is what is the actually growth factors for the pharma industry. As you know, this is always discussed within the public as well. Aging population is a very serious problem for all governments, and because aging populations means that from the economy perspective, you could not find enough source for actually for your industry, scientific industry. And also the other means that actually you should pay too much for the drugs and also hospital costs, and that means that your health expenditure will be increased day by day, and that's why actually it's a bad news for the countries. That's why they actually support especially when we look at the developing and also developed countries. This is a main problem in that countries, and the government support the people give birth, and also support the actually country to give extra resource to the public. And also the other thing is changing lifestyle and increased income. Actually, we could not say that the second bullet is applicable for today, increased income, because there is a recession all around the world, as you know, including our country, and actually we are struggling from the economical perspective. But actually, when we look at the previous years, that's clear that actually lifestyle is changing, because we consume too much, actually, how can I say, unhealthy foods, maybe I can call all of them like that. And that's why actually that brings us to serious problems from the health perspective. And that's why we always actually face that kind of problems in the especially developed and developing countries, because income is increased and then people actually spend money for consuming products and they not actually eat healthy foods. And rising chronic disease, actually it is linked to the actually previous two topics we already discussed, because when you actually consume the unhealthy products, and also if you are talking about the aging population, the third pillar of this circle is not actually evitable, because that means that you will have chronic diseases and then will actually pay money for that disease and drugs. And Turkish pharmaceutical industry in the actually 16th line in the Europe, and also it's applicable for the all around the world as well. When we look at the Turkish pharmaceutical from the size perspective, we are in the actually first 20 countries, and actually the rate is growing, but actually there is a little bit pricing pressure on the companies. Maybe you heard about that the euro exchange rate is about, as I know, lastly it's actually announced at 10.5 Turkish lira. And actually, when we look at the current euro rate, currency, it's about over 20. And this also actually put a little bit pressure on the pharmaceutical industry in Turkey. Yeah, when we look at the employment number in the pharmaceutical industry, it is actually over 800,000 people. And actually most of the people working in the research and development and also medical consist of the physicians. That is good news for you, because it's the physicians are a good source for the pharmaceutical industry, because you have the actually most knowledgeable person to actually know the disease and the patients as well. And actually the pharmaceutical industry still needs more resource for the their medical and research and development organizations. When we look at the future, we will talk a little bit about that. And actually, when we look at the future perceptions, actually the companies actually invest on more complex molecules and products, and that means that we will actually hire the people know that kind of complex products and then explain that to the patients and the physicians. So actually you will definitely play a key role in the future of the pharmaceutical industry. And actually, besides physicians, also pharmacists, nurses, and also biologists and chemists are also working in the pharmaceutical industry, especially for the research and development and the medical. These are the key focus area currently. As I said, actually the companies invest on the novel products in the cell and gene therapies and also immunology, and that brings actually some requirements like hiring experienced people and have a special expertise in that areas. Yes, I will a little bit talk about the R&D process. I don't know if you actually anyone mentioned about it before to that actually audience, but I will also briefly talk about the R&D processes and in actually how many phases we are talking about here. I know that too many people heard that kind of information after the COVID-19, because we actually how can I say, waited the vaccines to trade ourselves and also our close relatives. So everyone closely follow up the what happened in the pharmaceutical industry and which vaccines is developing. And that's why you heard about the phase 1, phase 3, phase 2, and actually how the product is actually developed. And actually, when I discussed the people around me, and I heard that actually we already, this was the first time we interested in the research and development, because they waited the vaccines. And the first one is preclinical development. I will basically actually mention about it. Actually, when we look at the R&D processes, first step is the preclinical development. Actually, in the in vivo test, you should look at the toxicity, pharmacology, and chronic toxicity. And for the chronic toxicity, sometimes the companies work with the experimental animals, and that's happened. Unfortunately, if you have a animal lover, that's a bad news for you. But actually, sometimes the companies work with the animals in that stage. And the second one is clinical trials. Actually, phase 1, phase 3, and phase 2 and phase 3. Actually, in these phases, the patients are included in the studies. And in the phase 1, we generally look at the efficacy. And phase 3, we generally look at the toxicity, safety of the product, basically. And in the phase 3, actually we look at the both actually aspect, and actually the product is safe and efficient. And after the phase 3, as you know, you need to get the registration to actually market your product in the countries, and you should get the approval from the regulators. And after that, you should get the price. After that, you should actually make sure that your product is in the reimbursement list, because the regulators are the main clients for the pharma industry. That's why you should your product should be reimbursed if you want to be in the market. And the last stage is pharmacovigilance. This is my area of expertise, and actually we can look at the safety data after the product is launched. And as you know, actually in the clinical trials, we are working with very isolated patients. And when you actually put your products on the market, that means that you will reach 1 million or 2 million people at the same time, depending on the product, sure, but actually in some products, actually that could be happen. And actually you should look at the safety is still the same, and actually remains favorable from the patient perspective. And that's why you should ensure that your product is still safe, and then you should continuously monitorize your product safety profile. And pharmacovigilance is doing that basically. And when you look at the processes at the bottom, and the total R&D process actually takes 10 years approximately, and that means that you actually already lose half of your patent protection. And because the patent protection is actually last after the 20 years, you actually first register the product and you take the patent for the product, and that means that actually you already lose, as I said, your patient's patent period in the clinical trials. And you should just, and when you consider the registration process, especially in countries like Turkey, it takes about 3 or 4 years. And if your product is very novel product, in that case, maybe it takes 1 or 1.5 years, but generally it's about 3 years. And you should put that period as well, plus the R&D process. And actually, especially for the developing countries, that's not so easy to get the registration. And the companies only have more than 5 years to put the product on the market as an originator. And after that, you will face with the generic products on the market, because your patent will be expired after the 20 years. And then the other generic products can actually come to the market. And they are ready to go, and they are closely looking at your patent period. And then most probably the day after your patent is expired, they will be on the market. You can sure about it. I hope that's clear from the R&D perspective. Yeah, when we look at the allocation of the R&D investment, that is so important, because when you look at here, the total actually cost of the clinical trials consists of half of the product development. And that's why the companies actually put too much actually importance here, because they said that we are the innovative companies. If we are talking about the multinational company, they are generally invest on the novel products, and that means that actually you will actually invest too much money to do R&D. And actually given that the only 10% or 5% of your R&D investment will back to you, because you actually always spend money in that phases. And for example, in the phase 3, you can see that your product is not safe, and that means that that's the garbage. and then you should actually start from the beginning, and then you should find another molecule, and then you should start again from the preclinical to clinical, and actually the all money you spend until the phase 3 will be go to the garbage, as I said. So that's why they should be very careful to invest a molecule. That is the one of the key steps for the multinational companies, and because they should be very careful, because it takes about $1 billion to actually develop the molecule from beginning to end. And that's why in some cases this happened to the all companies, by the way. In the phase 3 or phase 2, actually you will see that your product is not efficient as expected, or you are not safe as expected, and after that you should decide, I should go or not. And generally the companies decide not to go, and that's why they start from the beginning for the another molecule. Actually, for that reason, the novel products a little bit expensive. That was the main reason. When you actually most probably heard about the pricing policy for the products, and you will say that how actually could be logical to put, for example, too much money for a novel product because patients is waiting for that drug, but they could not afford that product. And also in some cases, governments also is not willing to pay the product, actually reimburse the product for the patients. Actually, and sometimes they said that you are actually doing that product for the patients, but they cannot afford that price, and you should reduce the price. And the company says that this is not possible, and because we actually invest too much money in the R&D process and also registration process, and actually it sounds a little bit ridiculous, but actually the governments plays key role here, and that's why I said that regulators is the one of the key pillar of this circle, pharmaceutical industry circle. You should actually somehow convince the patients and also your governments about your product, and then the product should be reimbursed, and then in that way the patients could easily reach to the product when you put it on the market. Yes, when we look at the clinical trials and in which countries these clinical trials are conducted, I don't know if this is a surprise picture for you, because generally there is a myth in the public. The actually clinical trials is performing the countries actually in low or mid-income countries like Africa and Middle East countries, and they are using us, the people in that countries, as a how can I say, experimental people, and then you should apply the drug and see it's sufficient or not. But this is a complete myth, and then to dispel this myth, I put that slide, because when you can see here, the most of the clinical trials is performing Europe, US, Canada, and also developed countries. And for example, I'm working for Bayer, as you know, and actually we try to bring more clinical trials in our country, because the people can easily reach to the novel products. Yes, we know that we are talking about the clinical trial, and then we don't know if the product is safe or efficient as expected. But actually for the clinical trials, generally it is performing for the drugs, for the unmet needs, and then the people need that product. And then this is the last chance for most of the patients to use that product, and then actually back to their normal life. And that's why actually this is so important. And actually in contrary to known in the public, the clinical trials is generally actually conduct in the developed countries, not the low and mid-income countries. Yes, we will a little bit talk about the future of the pharmaceutical industry here, because you will see that how many clinical trials is conducted in which disease. And when you look at here, I believe that this is not a surprise for you, because cancers is in the first place, as always, especially in the last 2 or 3 decades. And it's still actually leading area for the industry. And then the companies invest on the cancers, and we are talking about the multiple cancers here. And it's actually a little bit changing day by day. And that's why we need to find the new solutions for the patients. And the second one is, the neurological disorders. Actually, this is mainly focused on the Alzheimer, Parkinson, because these are the disease actually we call as an unmet need, and because there are no actually real treatment in these areas, and then the companies want to bring too much options for that patients to the market. That's why there are too many clinical trials conducted in this area. And the third one is a little bit surprising for me as well, infectious disease. And actually, I believe that the sparking point should be a little bit linked to the COVID-19, because as you know, when you look at the future of the world, we should expect more pandemic. And that's why actually the companies again started to invest in infectious disease. And actually, generally, 1 or 2 decades ago, when I first started the industry, actually we just talk about a few companies actually working in that area. But actually, especially before the COVID as well, some actually startup companies start to develop some products for the unmet needs in that area. And that's why we see too many actually clinical trials in the infectious disease. Besides the major pharma companies like Pfizer, Novartis, Bayer, GlaxoSmithKline, the other actually small and startup companies also invest in that area to see the gap here. And immunological disease, this is also actually, there are too many patients, and also we are talking about too many diseases here, actually called as an unmet need, because we do not have any effective treatment for that disorders. And that's why actually too many companies also from actually unmet need aspect, actually they look at these diseases as well, and then started to develop too much product on here. And the last one is I want to discuss the cardiovascular and diabetes. Cardiovascular disease, actually this is a big problem for actually we could not distinguish the countries here, because this is applicable to all countries. And we see that actually the diabetes actually is increasing, one of the key risk factor for the future of the world. And then also cardiovascular diseases actually bring with that diabetes. Actually, most of the diseases as a result of the diabetes. That's why actually this is one of the favorable area for the pharmaceutical companies still. And then they invest on the cardiovascular and diabetes area as well. My companies is also working in that area too much. Yes, actually, we are approaching the end of the presentation, and I will just give you that slide to actually let you know about which countries invest in pharmaceutical industry more. And actually, it's a little bit linked to the economy, because you should reimburse the product with a high price, and then to be an attractive country for the pharma industry, because the pharma industry is willing to put the products on the market. They want to negotiate with the regulators, because they have a very, as I said, invest on the products, and then they actually spend too much money in the R&D processes. And when they actually talk with any regulators in any country, actually they want to actually find a common solution for the patients, regulators, and pharma industry. And that means that actually you should actually agree on the price of the product in your country. And that's why, as you can see, as I said, actually US is the leading market for the pharma industry. And actually and as you can see here, a number of the new chemicals and biological entities in the countries is very actually show correlation here. And then as you can see here, FDA actually approved too much novel products and also novel therapies. And actually they bring the novel therapies in their countries, and then they pay the money for the pharma industry. And as you can see here, this is a little bit linked to the economy and also how much money you pay for your novel products to bring to your country. Yes, actually, I will show you the situation of the Turkey compared to the other OECD countries. Turkey is a little bit behind the curve, and actually we just actually spent 4.3 billion euro for the drugs, and actually it is, as you can see, under the average of the OECD countries. Yes, I will a little bit talk about the structure of the pharma industry. Most probably you can actually heard about it a little bit in the your daily routine. Maybe you actually meet someone in the industry and then ask where in which department you are working, and then you heard actually about some of the functions key for the pharmaceutical industry. And actually I will a little bit talk about the departments close to you, of like medical, clinical operations, medical governance, pharmacovigilance, regulatory affairs, and quality. These are we called that kind of functions as a required medical and how can I say, scientific expertise, because if you are working in that areas, you can actually have some knowledge about the drugs and also how they are functioning, and after that you can understand how the process is ongoing here. Dalia, you have a questions, I think.
Yes, I would like to know more about pharmacovigilance.
Yeah, sure. That's an easy question for me. I'm working in that area more than 10 years. And actually, as I briefly mentioned in the clinical trial part, actually, pharmacovigilance is responsible for monitoring of the drugs after after registration process. That means that you get the registration and ready to launch the product, put the product on the market. And after that, the pharmacovigilance actually come into the game. And then actually they started to look at the data, post-marketing data. And this actually post-marketing data is mainly coming from the physicians, because physicians actually prescribe the drug, and then also they monitorize the patient. And they said that after prescription, I actually observed that kind of safety issues. For example, I prescribe your drugs and then the patient experiences that adverse reaction. And then this comes to the company, and then we enter that information to a global database. And if you are talking about a local company, they are actually using a local databases. And we actually gathered that kind of information from the HCPs, actually use the drugs in their patients. And also we look at the publications. Is there any publications about our products? We actually perform the literature screening, publication screening, and then look at is there any news about our product. And also we conduct the clinical trials to look at the safety of our products. Actually, this can be a post-authorization study sometimes. Post-authorization means that in some cases, you cannot 100% convince the regulator about your safety of your product. And if actually regulatory has any question mark about your product, they can wait your registration, or if your product is a novel product and then actually bring a solution to the unmet needs, and in that case, they can approve your products and they can say that you can put the product on the market, but I want you to conduct a safety study on the patients actually you treated. And actually we can look at the all data from that study and then actually come to a decision. The product safety profile is remains positive or not. And the pharmacovigilance is basically doing that. We are looking at too many data, too many input from the patient, HCPs, social media, publications, post-authorization studies. And after gathering all data from all around the world, we look and come to a decision. The product remains safe or unsafe for the patient. And sometimes you heard about that the products actually recalled and withdrawn from the market due to the safety concerns. You actually heard about that kind of news sometimes from the media and social media. And the main reason generally linked to the pharmacovigilance activities, because in some publications or based on your pharmacovigilance data, the companies sometimes found something they didn't find in the clinical trials. And then they said that the product is not safe anymore for example, a specific population or for the overall population. If this is about the overall population, you should withdraw the product from the market, and that means basically your registration will be cancelled by the regulator. And in some cases, you might find something risky for a limited population, for example, for adolescents or geriatric population. In that case, you can apply some measures to prevent that adverse reactions, or apply some activities to mitigate this risk for that targeted population. Because your product is key for the rest of the population, in regulators in that case look at the actually your benefit overcome your risk, overweight your risk. Actually, they look at that point. And if they said that we should keep that product on the market for that population because they really need that product and there is no risk for that population. For example, for geriatric population, they see a risk, and in that case, the regulators sometimes approach you to mitigate this risk for the targeted population, and then you should find some solution. For example, you should put the geriatric population in the contraindications of the product, and then you can say that the product should not be recommended or should not be used in the geriatric population, and then you can change the indication and then convert to the contraindication. Pharmacovigilance is basically doing that as well. They are not only gathering the information, they are also mitigating the risk. If we see any risk, any population, any patient actually or overall population, in that case, we should look at the other options. We should actually withdraw the product, or we should mitigate that risk. But this is rarely happen, to be honest. Generally, clinical trials is conduct in a very limited and isolated population, but generally we can find the right balance, benefit risk balance for your products, and but with the pharmacovigilance you can ensure that you are still remain safe. And also for physicians, I can say that you are working in that area too much, because benefit risk assessment, basically you should look at the data as a physician or pharmacist. Generally physicians are working in that area, especially for the oncology, immunology, cardiology, because these are the areas required expertise. And that's why generally from my expertise from my company is saying that actually generally physicians is working in that area, and then they look at the benefit risk balance of the product. And this is a very key role in the companies, and then physicians actually generally holding that positions in the companies. You are lucky. I hope that I explain what pharmacovigilance doing.
Yes, thank you so much. So I have a following question.
Sure.
How hard and efficient is the process of withdrawing a drug?
Actually, you are asking that how can you ensure that process, or you are just saying that this is efficient or not?
Well, efficiency is based on the
sure. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I just got the question. Okay. Yeah, we should talk. If we are talking about the drug, there is two key aspects. The first one is efficiency, and the other one is safety. When you look at the withdrawal from the market, that means that you are not safe or efficient, as you actually argued, and that's why you should actually withdraw your product from the market. When we look at the total withdrawals, we could say that most of them actually were happened due to the safety reasons. Because from the efficiency perspective, yes, you are right. That's also one of the problem. If your product is not efficient as expected, sure, that's a problem, and then the regulators approach you to withdraw the product. But this is rarely happen generally, because actually you, from the regulator perspective, they generally have other options to use in that patients and in that disease, if this is not a special disease. And that's why they said that we have too many options here, and then generally physicians actually practice the product, and then they actually do not see any benefit from the product. They generally stop prescribing the drug, and that's why the company should withdraw the product on the market if it's not efficient. This at the end will be appear for everyone, for patients and HCPs. But from the withdrawal perspective, yes, in some cases, we recently actually heard that kind of news from the FDA a few months ago, and they actually withdraw a product due to the product is not efficient, and then they withdraw from the market. They also look at that, but efficiency is a little bit, how can I say, not easy to comment and not easy to decide, and that they should be coming from the clinical trials, and there should be another clinical trial conduct with your product. That should be for example, independent clinical trial, and after that it should say that actually the product is not efficient, and after that the regulators say that okay, we see another clinical trial results not conducted by your company, but they said that the product is not efficient. And in that case, actually, the regulatory decide to withdraw the product. But this is rarely happen. But for safety reason, you can see too many withdrawals from the market.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome. Yes, when we look at the right side of the table, and you will see sales, marketing, product supply, legal, market access, human resource. I will not talk about that functions because actually this is not specific to pharma industry. You can see that functions each and every industry besides pharma. Yes, that is all from my side, and actually I would like to give you a few minutes if you want to ask any question, anything.
We actually have a form for the questions that previously asked, and Noah is going to forward these questions to you right now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm happy.
So for the
First, I will stop share. Sorry. Yeah.
So for the first one, can you tell us more about the use of artificial intelligence in drug discovery and development?
Yeah, actually, this is one of the burning topic in the pharma industry. And yes, sure, as you also heard about the news for the COVID-19, and then the actually R&D processes reduced from the 5-6 years to 6 months, and then actually this is a question mark for most of the people, as you know. But this is possible, especially artificial intelligence is using the preclinical stage, not the clinical stage. And actually, first of all, you should ensure that your product toxicity profile is okay to moving forward to the clinical trials. That's why you should wait your long-term toxicity studies. But artificial intelligence, you can actually design the feature, and then when you look at the first 3 months of mode of action of your product, you can imagine what will be happen after 5 years. But for a normal drug development process, you should wait 5 years to ensure that in long term your product is not toxic. But with artificial intelligence implemented in the preclinical stage, you can ensure that. I'm not sure how regulators is approaching that topic. As I know, actually, it's still a discussion point between the pharma industry and then regulators. But you can actually, with the artificial intelligence, you can calculate the risk of the product in a defined feature. That's why you can reduce the, especially preclinical stage, and actually you can. That means that you can shorten the R&D processes. But this is, as I said, basically used in the preclinical stage, and also for the clinical stage. I just could say that I'm not an expert in the clinical operations, but artificial intelligence is definitely using in data mining, and then also actually besides the physicians and also experts in that area, you can also put the artificial intelligence as a plus to evaluate the data as soon as possible. This is also a benefit for the for clinical trial stage.
Thank you. So for the other question is, what is the role of pharmacists in helping patients manage chronic disease?
Whose responsibility? I didn't get.
And manage chronic disease.
Whose responsibility in that management?
The pharmacist. What is
pharmacist?
the role of the pharmacist?
Role of the pharmacist. Actually, definitely, especially for the emerging and low-income countries, pharmacists actually play a key role in the public, because unfortunately, I could say unfortunately, the people firstly go to the pharmacist to ask a question about the drug or about their disease, and after that after the pharmacist's recommendation, they actually generally consult a physician and go to a second or third level hospital. That's why they play a key role, definitely. But I'm not sure we actually good at in that expertise area, because you should actually give the right how can I say, write recommendations to the patients. But for pharmacies, if you are talking about the Turkish pharmacies, I am a member of them, but I could say that we are not good at in that area, and then that's why. But we should play too much role, and then first of all we should spend time in our pharmacies. That was the first problem here, because the pharmacies generally, after a few years, they generally actually spend less time, and year by year it's actually going down, and that's why they didn't consult the patient as expected. But I also know some people, some pharmacies, my close friends, spend too much time in the pharmacies, listen their patients, and then describe the product, and then how can they use that product. Actually, this is not linked to the, maybe I can actually a little bit go another direction, but this is also important for the acute disease, because I'm a pharmacist. When I go to a pharmacy to get products or medicines for my children or for myself, actually they didn't explain too much how I should use that product. I'm a pharmacist, and in some cases I could not understand what they write on the boxes, and that's not clear for me how much time I will use that, because I also give the prescription to the pharmacy for their record, and then I do not have any prescription, and I just actually need to follow up my treatment, what they actually put on the box or what they explain during my conversation by buying the product. And that's why that is always key to actually consultation of the pharmacist, and they should explain how can they use the product, how much time they should use the product, and what are the key contraindications. And then in some cases, I know that some pharmacists look at the other products, other prescriptions, and then they look at the possible interactions between the drugs, and then they are very good at this point, and then they explain everything to the patient, and they eliminate too many risks for the patient, like actually faced with a serious adverse reactions. Actually, we see that too many emergency applications happen due to the drug-drug interactions, and actually they trigger the serious adverse reactions. So for your question, not only for chronic disease, for also acute diseases, the consultation of the pharmacist is actually playing key role, especially countries like Turkey.
Okay, for the third one, what is the modern techniques of testing the drugs?
Testing drugs, you are talking about the quality control for the products on the market, or before the putting on the market?
Before
Putting. Actually, to be honest, I'm not an expert in the quality control, so I could not very well address your question, but I can get some information about it, and I can share with you later on.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah. But I could say that each and every product should be tested based on their specifications before releasing to the market. That should be done, and then you should be document that in your records for the future audits or inspections from the health authorities. That should be done, and then I can ensure that each and every company should perform that kind of testing, not on the finished product, as well as mature product and also unmature products. Sorry, before the actually putting products on the secondary packaging or primary packaging, they test the product, and they test the product after the packaging, and also they look at the granulation phase. If we are talking about a product in the tablet form, you should do too many tests along the production, and you should ensure that in each and every step your product actually fulfill the requirements in the specifications. because if you want to get a registration for a product, you should provide regulatory authority to full data, technical data about your product, how you will test your product before putting the market, and what will be the specifications. And this will be given in the module 3 in the CTD dossier. CTD means that actually use a format for the drug registration in the especially developed and developing countries. And you should actually give a full data to the regulatory authority, and during an inspection you should ensure that I apply each and every step I mentioned in my product dossier. But I could say that this is if we are talking about drug, actually we are talking about a very regulated area, the most regulated area in the world, after the chip production. and that's why actually we have very tight regulations to ensure the patient safety, and the product is in the limits here given.
Okay, so you can tell us about the placebo effect and how do you use it in your studies?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Actually, it depends on the product and the design of the study, but there are too many studies and study types in the clinical trials. You can compare the two products, or you can compare your product to the placebo. And yes, placebo groups are using in some clinical trials, but it's based on your actually type of the study, and then the actually seriousness of the disease, or actually it depends on a little bit. But yes, placebo groups are available in the clinical trials.
So for the last question, what is the background of a pharmacist like? Like, do every pharmacy have a laboratory?
Every farm, yes, sure, yeah. That's actually a question out of my knowledge, because I'm actually spending too much time in the pharma industry. I'm a little bit actually away from the private pharmacies, but yes, I could say that this is actually a requirement in the local regulation, and they should actually establish the small but actually small but efficient laboratory, and then they should make the drugs based on the prescriptions. They should actually make most of the active ingredients available in their laboratory. And there is a list of the active ingredients should be actually captured in the pharmacies based on the local regulation. But this is all I know about it.
Okay, so that's everything, all the questions. Thanks for answering.
You are welcome.
So now Helen has some words to say.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We would like to thank you as our class for joining us this evening and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you very much, Helen. Actually, that looks great. That was the first time I am taking a appreciation from a university. Actually, this happened in if we are doing an official agreement with the universities, we are doing that with some universities, and then we are taking that kind of documentation. But that was the first time I am actually guest for all of you, and this is an unofficial activity, and without any how can I say, agreement or contract, and that's why thank you very much for that. I really enjoyed the time, and it's an honor for me to be with you. And if you have any question or anything else, you can add me in your LinkedIn network, and then I could try to answer as much as possible. I'm using the same name, Çağlar Güvel, and then you can reach me via LinkedIn and then ask any question if you want.
I would like to thank you again. Helen, you can stop sharing right now. Thank you so much for this evening. We really have this knowledge, good knowledge because of you. Thank you so much again. And now, if we can take a picture of the person, it would be great. Yeah, if you can open all your cameras, we would be yeah. I'm going to take a few screenshots.
Yes.
Yes, I'm stopping the recording for right now.